Sports. I'm predicting the NFL playoffs all in this episode. Talk about the current state of the NFL and what's going on with Antonio Brown not wanting to be traded or traded. I don't know. Either way, all that right to you on this way. First up podcast of 2019. Roll that intro for episode 14. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 14 of my Deck podcast. You may be wondering yourself, why the hell am I so dressed up in a white shirt, black tie? That is because I'm taking pictures for a video. I'm making more on that later. But besides the point, how y'all doing? It's 2019, everyone. Holidays are over. No more mention of those. I took the Christmas tree down finally. But so with the playoffs starting this weekend, I figured you know what? Let's do a prediction episode because we did one in the beginning of the season. I was pretty spot on some of my predictions. I was off on some. It was episode 4, I believe, with Steve Riley. We predicted some of the divisional winners. We were right for the most part because the NFL is not that hard to predict as far as what teams are going to be good are. As far as what happens in the playoffs, that is, it's a whole different thing. I decided to include this is like a podcast / episode, so some of this will seem like I'm making a video out of it, but I'm not. Don't worry. By the way, if you're tuning in from YouTube or Castbox or Facebook, thank you very much. If you want to hit that like button or subscribe to the page or like the page on Facebook, I don't know. There's a lot of things going on multiple different media outlets. So whatever it is to show the support, comment down below with what you think, because we're going to get into a lot of predictions and stuff. And I want to know your feedback because it's always great when I can hear from everybody who watches the page. And I'm getting like hundreds of views here, so I know a lot of you are watching. You're just being silent creepers there. So recent news. So, Antonio Brown from the Steelers. Oh, by the way, if you don't care for sports, you still stick around for the humor and stuff, but we'll get into it. Antonio Brown may or may not be getting traded from the Steelers. We know they're losing Bell already because they're not going to pay him. He doesn't want to be there. As evident, he didn't play a snap this season. I don't know, kind of messed up. I mean, I understand from both point of views. For him, they're just going to run him into the ground because it's their last year with him. From the team point of view, it's kind of messed up. He just holds out. Teammates were kind of throwing him under the bridge. He just didn't want to play. I mean, that's kind of it's messed up in that fact. I mean, you pay a guy. I know they franchise tagged him a couple times, and then they went out and got James Conner, who was almost as effective as Bell would have been. So for his point of view, in that he wants to revolutionize how running backs get paid because they do have short life cycles in the NFL. That's just kind of given, though. You're pretty much getting hit on almost every play as a running back. You are as a lineman, too, but they also have short careers. I don't know what you want, bro. You signed up for this. You're making millions of dollars. You're in an organization that wins every year. Granted, they haven't got to the big one in a while, but they're still in it. Your injury was what hampered them from going a couple years ago. I'm holding a piece of paper. I'll put that down for you. But I don't agree with that. I don't agree with them not wanting to pay him. I don't agree with him not playing. It's all just a mess up situation. Now, Antonio Brown, their other star player, pretty much said he wants to be traded, although the head coach Mike Tomlin said that that's not true. I don't know. It sounds like everyone's just kind of covering their own butts. It does suck. It sucks. It's good for them because they found James Conner is not a complete replacement for Le'Veon Bell, and then Juju Smith-Schuster is not a complete replacement for Antonio Brown. So they're essentially getting the discount versions of each of them, which, again, they're both studs, so it's not bad. It just kind of sucks that now they don't have, the actual good versions of them. I don't know, and Ben didn't look great coming into camp this year. I don't know what he's going to look like next year. But, hey, that's just, you live and die by the sword there, I guess. You want to be organization that finds good talent apparently, but then can't hold on to him. I don't know. That's just it's tough for them. It's tough if you're a Steelers fan getting eliminated from the playoffs and Baltimore's going. They look good. Cleveland's on the rise. Cincinnati finally fired Marvin Lewis, who I think had naked pictures of the owner or something, or maybe they killed a hooker together because there's no reason he should have been coaching there for the last 17 years with losing seasons, most of them not making the playoffs. I don't know what the hell he had. He had some dirt on somebody to stay in that organization. Because being a good guy doesn't necessarily lock you down on your job. I don't know. But Either way, we got a lot to get into with the predictions for this year's playoffs, so we'll do that now. Starting off, so basically I'm going to go about this by just explaining. The first 4 games I'm going to go into in depth, and then after that it just gets crazy because, I'm not going to go so far into the predictions of breaking them down because the matchups aren't set. And if one thing happens and it just throws, if a different team wins, then it just throws everything out. So, like I said before, this will be a video that I will put out Friday because last year I had a lot of success with writing in, doing a write-up of each prediction, and a lot of people seem to like them. So I figured, why not just do it in video form? It's a lot easier. Well, a lot easier, quote unquote. So we'll start off with the very first game, which is Saturday afternoon at 4, which is Indy at Houston, which is a great matchup. It's a divisional matchup. Those are always fun, first week in the playoffs. This season, they split the season. They each won 1. Each of the games were decided by 3 points. So, I wouldn't go as far as making a bold prediction that this one as well is going to be decided by 3 points in the end. I wrote this very, very small. Oh, yeah. So, Andrew Luck was what the hell even is this? Oh, it's like some weird 260 per game. That's the rushing yards allowed. Andrew Luck at the beginning of the year looked really, really, really good. There was a span of about 8 weeks when he was throwing 3 or more touchdowns and just killing it, looking like the Andrew Luck that we all thought he was going to turn into. Because remember, the Colts for going back 3 or 4 years before Luck got his initial shoulder injury, they went to the wild card, lost. Then the next year they went to the divisional round, lost. Then they went to the AFC Championship and lost. So by process of natural progression, we all thought, well, next year's probably the Super Bowl. Then Andrew Luck got hurt, and the team kind of fell apart around him. So this year, it seems to be that they could be trending back upwards. They've already played a playoff game against the Tennessee Titans. They won, which I thought they would. If Mariota had played, things might be a little bit different. But it's going to be a very, very hard road for the Colts to try and get to a Super Bowl. Not only do they have to play on Wild Card Weekend, like I said, they played a playoff game essentially last weekend. So it's just I don't know how they're going to do it. Switching it over to the Houston side, they looked real good halfway through the year, and I harp on this a lot. You don't win in the playoffs in October and November. You can look really good in certain portions of the year, and then not so good at the end of the year. And Houston is kind of stumbling in. They had the number 2 seed locked up a long time ago, and then they gifted it to us on Christmas, to us being the New England Patriots. So they lost. Now they play on Wild Card Weekend. Luckily, they get a home game. I don't know how much home field in Houston really means. They've never really been. When the franchise first came around, they were pretty dominant at home, and then that's kind of gone away. They're a good team. Their defense is 3rd in rushing, and they've let up under 100 yards of rushing throughout the season. I think it's about 80 yards a game or something. Their defense is also near the top in sacks in the entire league. They're really good against the run. Against the pass, they're not so good, I would say. Both teams actually really good against the run. I'm nervous about Deshaun Watson. They've been forcing him to run a lot. I don't know what that is. Now he has some sort of chest injury. I know he got hurt at the end of the game last week. It's just, I don't know. Those teams they're so dead even. I think the way that Indy wins this game is if I'll say it this way. Indy can win this game if Andrew Luck performs as he did during the middle of the season. If he can go off and throw 4 touchdowns, I think that Indy has a very strong chance, and that Indy will be going to Kansas City next week. If Luck looks like he did last week against Tennessee, where he should have thrown 2 straight pick sixes. They were really bad throws, just kind of chucking it up. I don't know what the hell he was doing. If Mariota played in that game last week, as I said before, I think the Colts lose because Luck, even though they did blow them out, they weren't looking that good, and they gifted the Titans the ball in scoring position so many times. So I think if Luck can go off and be the MVP caliber quarterback that he is, I think that they have a strong chance to win this. Houston, on the other end, Houston just getting Lamar Miller back was huge for them. I don't know why they were rushing with Watson so much, but I think that him being back maybe had something to do with it. You still have DeAndre Hopkins, who's one of the best receivers in the league. Even if the numbers didn't reflect it this year, he was still just filthy. I mean, his hands are route running so good. And their defense, Colts don't have really much of a rushing game as it is, let alone with one of the top rushing defenses going against them. I don't think they're going to be moving the ball much on the ground unless they set up the run with the pass and all that stuff. So, that being said, my predictions for this game, I know I've been talking on this. Is my first game I'm predicting, okay? Although the next ones will be quicker. This game, I think, is going to come down to 3 points. It's going to come down to a field goal or holding off a field goal attempt. If this was in Indianapolis, I think Houston wins. It being in Houston, I think Houston still wins. I think they hold on late. I think it's going to be a sloppy, ugly kind of game. I think Houston does win at home, though, with the little home field advantage that they have. That's, even with luck, even if he goes off, I think Houston can still manage out a victory here. Houston's been kind of trending upwards. It's funny that the AFC South is becoming one of the better. This year has been one of the better divisions in football. Last year, the Jags won it, and I said the only reason why the Jacksonville Jaguars won the division last year is there was no luck. Watson got hurt, quarter way through the season, and Tennessee was just still figuring out what the hell they were doing. Now you see what happens when all three teams have their starters and got a clue back. Jacksonville's trash. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But nevertheless, I mean, if Jacksonville can get a quarterback, they might be, that might be sneakily one of the better divisions in football. But I digress. From the final score, I'm predicting a 30-27 victory for Houston. Maybe this one, I can see this one out of all the games coming down to a very last second field goal where they just nail it at the very, very end and Houston wins. I think Houston goes on. Houston comes up to New England because that's the outcome of the playoffs. If they win, they come to New England for next week's game, and I'll get into that afterwards. So, yeah, 30-27, Houston victory. Mark it down. Moving on to the second game on Saturday, Seattle at Dallas. Now, Seattle has kind of come out of nowhere. They looked bad at the beginning, like throughout the year, and then suddenly Russell Wilson just figuring stuff out. It's been fun to watch. They've been kind of inconsistent though. Russell Wilson probably would be the MVP if Pat Mahomes didn't throw 50 touchdowns. Maybe. Who knows? Because Mahomes is clear-cut MVP, but Russell Wilson doesn't look that bad. And that defense is the offense. They're number one in rushing, which is weird. They're like Chris Carson and Mike Davis, the other running back there, had a brain fart right there. Yeah, they're number one in rush yards a game. It's wild. They are one of the inconsistent teams in the league this year. They lost to San Francisco, which is like San Francisco was not good. They have a great defense. They also split with LA, which is surprising. If they hadn't been in the same division as St. Louis, LA. If they hadn't been in the same division as the Rams, they might have had a better seeding. They might have even won the division. It sucks that they play them once. Splitting with them just shows what kind of team they are. A team I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The Ravens are, Seattle and the Ravens are like the same kind of team. They have a good rushing defense, a good rushing team. They're both a team that nobody wants to play. Nobody wants to play those teams and get popped in the first round. That's just they're kind of question marks. Yeah, it's unfortunate for both of them too that they didn't. It's unfortunate for the Seahawks that they didn't get home field advantage because you know what kind of home field advantage the team has. It's probably one of the toughest. It's one of the toughest stadiums to play in the NFL, and they just couldn't get the home field. So they're on the road the entire way as a 6th seed. And the fact that they've only lost to good teams is huge. It's huge for the playoffs. I mean, they didn't lose to any bad, gross teams like the Cowboys did on the other side, their opponent. We all know that Zeke is Zeke. Zeke's going to eat. I think there's a huge question mark for Dak If he can play well, good enough to win a game, then the Cowboys can win. They're at home. Dallas doesn't have that great of home field advantage. I think there was at one point a few years ago where Floyd Mayweather had fought in their arena, and he won more games than they did in like a calendar year. It was wild. So they've never really been one of those teams that you have to watch out to go into. Teams have been able to do that. They're benefiting from playing this year in a really weak division. The Giants aren't good. Philly has been super inconsistent, and the Redskins just can't not have a quarterback break their leg. So Dallas, and here's the thing. Dallas is one of those teams where all of these teams in the playoffs, really, I don't mind seeing win. As a New England Patriots fan, I always want to see us win, but, you can't win every year. And if I have to pick other teams, a lot of these teams, I don't mind seeing them win. Dallas is not one of them. I've come to realize very quickly that their fans are awful, and everyone hates their fans, and there's a good reason for them. A lot of people hate New England fans because we win all the time, so they just hate everything about the team. They hate, there's always the level of, belligerent asshole fans that we have. Every team has that. But Cowboys fans are just wicked. Ugh, they're just awful. As soon as they start winning, it's, how about them Cowboys? And you're like, oh, God, rest in peace to your ears. But, it's the worst. It's like, you won a game. Shut up, man. You won 4 games. All right, the Cowboys are back. What? They haven't won anything yet, man. Let's settle down. So just see them and imagine a world where the back-to-back Super Bowl winners are Philly and then the Cowboys. I'm sorry, I don't want to live in that world, man. I don't want to turn on SportsCenter and see America's team wins it again. Okay, they ain't been America's team since the 90s. What do we? And they're like, just nothing. I don't like the Cowboys if you haven't guessed from this. I used to like their players growing up, like Emmitt Smith and stuff. But just recently, just digressing. They've been beating up bad teams this season. I think they're overrated. Getting Amari Cooper was good for them, but I don't know. I like some of their players. I like Zeke. I like that guy. Not Vanderjack. Their middle linebacker there is nasty. Sean Lee is nasty. Their defense is really good. They've been surprisingly good, but they've also been beating up bad teams. So they look good against inferior competition. So I can't credit them too much. This one, the way Seattle wins is Russell Wilson just has to be electric. He usually is. He's got Doug Baldwin and Lockett playing well. If he can continue that, plus with that number 1 rushing yards a game defense, the number 1 rushing yards a game team can go in there and possibly run on Dallas. For Dallas, on the other hand, I think if they just let Zeke eat, and Dak is pedestrian, mediocre at best. If he's not bad, if he's just decent and get the ball out to Cooper, and those little screen dink and dunk passes he likes to throw to Zeke, if he can get that going, I think Dallas can hold on and win. But the way I see this game going is Seattle seems to have a clover up their butts. Aside from losing, Russell Wilson throwing the worst play call and Russell Wilson throwing the worst pass to try and win a Super Bowl and losing to us in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. Besides that, they get really lucky. I mean, they beat Green Bay while Russell Wilson threw 5 picks. They seem to have this thing. They were going to lose a game to Minnesota a few years ago, a playoff game, and Minnesota missed a 27-yard field goal. That just doesn't happen. It's like a point extra, and they whiffed, and they should have lost that playoff game, but they just have a clover up their butts. And I feel like the Cowboys are the opposite way. They don't get lucky. They beat themselves, and they lose games on those weird fashions where Seattle wins games on weird fashions. So I think Seattle goes in there, and I think the playoff experience of Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and that entire team as a collective, I think they get it done versus the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys are there yet. I think Seattle comes out of there with a win, and I think this is one of the blowouts of the playoff. I think this one's 31-17. I think Dak bright lights just get to him, and I think Seattle wins. So moving on to the game that probably means the most in New England in this area, the Ravens at the Chargers. Chargers at Ravens. Sorry. This is another one where the Chargers are really unlucky that they play in the same division as the Chiefs, because if anybody else is in their division, they get home field. They still had a chance to get home field up until, the week when they played the Ravens, actually, and they choked, which goes along with what I think. Chargers are perennial chokers. They usually have a good team. There's something wrong with it. There's something. Last year they lost like 6 games by 3 points or less. And you're thinking, okay, it's just a team that's trying to break through, but it's something about them that they just lose. They have the pieces there. They're always in the mix, but they just lose every time. And it's like, I feel bad for them on a sense, because I do kind of like and respect Phillip Rivers, that savvy vet. I kind of want to see him get something. It's unfortunate that to see him get a ring means he probably had to go through us, which was unfair, and I hate that. But I feel like he does deserve it. He's been in the league for 100 years, and he's always been right there, being one of the better quarterbacks. I don't know, man. This is another one of those. Their opponent, the Ravens, are scary good. Their defense is top 10, top 5 in every statistical category. This team is just really good. They already went into LA and beat them because the Chargers don't have look. I mean, even if the Chargers had home field, it wouldn't matter. They can't even get people to go to their own games, let alone have some sort of home crowd advantage. It's like playing in a mutual field. The Ravens, they're so unpredictable. They're so inconsistent because they look real good against real good teams, and then they look real bad against real bad teams. So it's a battle of who can suck the least, I think. This should be a game that the Ravens can win. They already beat the Chargers, but I don't know. I think the Chargers might be able to pull this one through, but at the same time, they're perennial chokers. So it also sucks because I am a Chargers fan. I am hard. If you were a New England Patriots fan, you are cheering for the Chargers a ton. You are a fan of the San Diego Superchargers of LA because we want them to win, to go into Baltimore and win, then go to Kansas City and win, and then come here for the AFC Championship game and lose. Because that's the best outcome we could have. But betting on the Chargers is never going to work out. That we needed the same scenario to happen when they went. I think they went to Kansas City and beat Kansas City, and then all they needed to do was go to Denver and beat Denver and Peyton Manning, when he was awful, noodle arm, no neck, and they just got their asses kicked. And we had to go to Denver, and history, that was 2013, 2015. I don't know, one of those years. Cheering for them is like cheering for someone who you know is going to lose, but has like just a puncher's chance. So you're like, come on, I need you to just win this one. And they just never get it done. I'm terrified as a New England Patriots fan of the Ravens coming here, because they are not scared to come in here and give us a game, and I don't think we have the horses to do it. It's scary. I'm scared of the Ravens. I said it. I will say it. A grown man, I am scared of my football team losing to another football team. So I need the Chargers to win, but I don't think it's going to happen. So my prediction is pretty much the same thing that happened last time. I think the Chargers are going to come in there, go into Baltimore and get beat up. They're like the team. They look like a team that's just going to get beat up. They're going to get beat up. 24-14 is my prediction. I don't think it's going to be close. I think that last 14 or maybe 17, I think the last couple points are going to come in the very end when the Chargers look like they might have a chance, and then they don't. They blow it. I think I've said the Chargers like 100 times so far, but they just puke on themselves. That's it. So moving on to the very last game and my very last prediction for this week is the Eagles and the Bears. The Eagles shouldn't be in the playoffs, but the magic of Footlong Foles has came back. I'm not nervous about it. I think that they're dogs again. They're underdogs, 6-point favorites. Is going to Chicago. Philly, it's just there's not a lot to say. There's looking at their team as a whole, they're mediocre at best. I think their best statistic is their defense, and that's not even that good. It's just weird. I don't understand how they came into the 6th seed. That should tell you everything. That division isn't that strong. Seeing the Redskins, Giants, Cowboys look weird. I don't know. Wentz went down, and the fact that Foles is the only one that can make that team win is really, really strange. I think out of the entire playoffs, this dream scenario I'd love to see happen. I'd love to get another crack. I'd love for the Patriots to get another crack at the Eagles. At the same time, I'm also terrified because we've seen this happen before. But I don't think that they're going to capture the magic again. I hope the players kept their underdog masks. I really do. It was fun watching it last year all the way up until the Super Bowl. But who knows? Who knows? On the other side, the Bears. Philly's going into the Bears, which they're the dark horse of the NFL. I wish I had known on my first prediction show that they were going to get Khalil Mack, because I would have predicted them a lot better than I did. I thought they were going to be all right. That defense was on the rise, but getting him completely changed it. They are another team that are statistically in the top 10 for every category on defense. If Trubisky can continue to be, he's very strange going. I looked at my dog. My dog's twitching like crazy right now. She's just snoring up a storm. Trubisky looks good. Sometimes he runs. He looks like a quarterback that's going to be here for a couple years maybe. I don't think he's their answer because he scrambles too much, and as soon as he starts getting hit and taking some of that damage, all that damage, I don't even need that piece of paper anyway. I just dropped it. Just kidding. I do need the score on it. I can see it there. Yeah, I don't know. Trubisky, the team, the fact that they won with Chase Daniel shows you that their defense is really, really good, and they got a lot of weapons on offense. They have Trey Burton from the Eagles last year. They got Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard. Sorry, I'm getting tired. I've looked at so much stats today. They can bruise you, and that speed from Tariq Cohen, the gadget plays and all that stuff. I think that Philly going in there is not going to be good for them. I don't think their team is complete enough. I think the game is just I think they just get beat up, just like the Chargers do. The Bears D is stingy at best. They also take the ball away and score with it. They gave us a competition when we went there. I say we, I mean the Patriots. When the Patriots went there, that they almost lost that game the same way they lost in Miami. Same kind of thing. And they almost on the 1 yard line the tackle was to, lose the game. But I think Philly goes up there and gets beat up. I don't think they have that magic. But who knows? Because every time I picked against Philly last year, Philly won. So who knows? Who knows what happens this time? But my prediction is, what did I write down there? Oh, 23-20. I think they hold off a field goal attempt by Philadelphia. I think they fall short and get one and done this year. In Chicago, that being said, Chicago would go on to cut that because that looked weird. I think Chicago would then go on the road to play New Orleans next weekend. But those are my predictions for the wild card round. Those are my solid ones that I'll be making into a video later on. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go into in depth like I just did. I know we're up against the time now as it is, but I'll just run through these. So if all the predictions that I said, where Houston wins, Seattle wins, Baltimore wins, and Chicago wins, the playoffs would look like this. Next week, Baltimore will be going to Kansas City, which I'm glad that we can't face Baltimore right away unless Houston loses. If Indy beats Houston, then and the Baltimore wins, like I think they do, then Baltimore comes here. But my prediction is that Houston's going to take care of business and be visiting up here. But if Baltimore wins and everything happens the way I'm predicting, they go to Kansas City next week, which who knows, that defense versus that offense. I'll also make a quick prediction. I think Kansas City can score on that team. They don't have Hunt, which is huge. If they did, my prediction would be Kansas City all the way, but they don't. And I guess I'd really have to see what Baltimore looks like because they've been so inconsistent against people. But if they look good against the Chargers, they can look good against Kansas City, and who knows? I think Kansas City still wins, though. My ultimate fear is, as a Patriots fan, that game is total fear. Because, we play Houston, and Houston is just big brother, little brother. They never beat us in anything ever. We've always knocked them out of the playoffs. This year, they could do it, but the fact that we look so good at home, and we're rallying and playing good, I can't bet against Brady and Belichick at home in the playoffs. I just can't, especially against Houston. What in the future in Everton has led you to believe that you can bet against them? There's no way I can. So I think it's a close game, but I think we pull it out. Then we'll go. I'm going through the AFC first. Then I think Kansas City beats Baltimore, and I think the AFC Championship game is at Arrowhead, where New England loses to the Chiefs because on the road they're just not good. Their defense is okay, but their offense isn't as good as when they met in week 3 or week 4, whenever it was. We played them and just barely outlasted them. I think we only won that game because we were at Gillette. I think we get whooped. Unfortunately, I hate betting against them, but they've done nothing on the road to make me think otherwise. I think they get whooped at Arrowhead, a score of like 31-17 or something bad in the AFC Championship game, and I think Kansas City moves on to the Super Bowl representing the AFC. If I go to the NFC side of things, Chicago going into New Orleans, again, I don't know what it's going to look like because New Orleans hasn't been playing well. I've said this before. I think New Orleans, they heated up too early in the season. They looked unbeatable. I mean, that team at a couple points looked like you could put them up against anybody throughout the history of the NFL, and they'd have a chance. But then they peaked. They blew one to the Cowboys at a pretty costly time in the year too, and I think they haven't looked the same since. Breeze has came back down to earth and is playing. Not that he's been inconsistent, but he just doesn't look like the Breeze of week 4 through 11. So I think Chicago can win. New Orleans is pretty good at home, so I think the veteran that team is just built on more veterans. So I think they win that game, and then I think Seattle and LA is another one of those where, look, LA has just looked unreal at the beginning of the season. They're still good. They've still got an overall rounded, probably best team. They probably the talent wise overall just good. Goff has been off lately, but I think they can beat Seattle at home. Again, that they're another one of those teams that doesn't really have a home field advantage. I think that Seattle wins those crazy games where it's like you think, back back in the Super Bowl when, Peyton Manning and that team looked unbeatable. LA's kind of built the same way where they just kind of fling the ball up, let Todd Gurley run over the place. I think Seattle can win it, but I don't think they will. So I think it'll be a battle of the 1 and 2 seed, just like in the AFC. We're starting to see that happen more and more lately. But it's all going to depend on how Chicago can play, really, and what Seattle looks like. So if I was to guess, I would say LA wins, narrow game, and I think New Orleans wins in a narrow game as well. So I think we get an LA New Orleans, which is what we all wanted from the entire season. I really don't know what happens in that game. I think Breeze finally finally has the defense and the offensive weapons to not choke it away. So we're looking at a New Orleans, Kansas City Super Bowl. That's my prediction. It's a soft prediction because I don't know. If I was to look at it on paper and do the matchups, I think that's the Super Bowl. New Orleans and Kansas City. I could be wrong. Injuries, teams that win. I mean, New Orleans could get popped 2 weeks from now. So who knows? That's my immediate prediction. What do you guys think? New Orleans, Kansas City, Super Bowl. Unfortunately, because I'm a Pats fan, but I don't think we have the dogs. I think we got the ponies, but I don't think we got the horses this year. I think we lose in the AFC Championship game out Kansas City. That being said, this has been a little bit longer of a podcast because there's a lot of stuff to get to. If you stuck around, I know it was a lot of information. I'm sorry if you're not a sports fan and you tuned in anyway. I tried to keep it as funny as I could, but it's really hard. A lot of dry stuff going on here. All right. So I want to know what you guys think. What do you think the predictions are going to be? Like I said, I will be dropping a weekly prediction for the entire playoffs for every matchup. Not as in-depth. It'll be like a 5-minute video, so if you want to check that out and give that a like as well. I was supposed to have someone else here today to help me with all this. It would have been a little bit better of a time, but scheduling conflicts arose. But it is what it is, right? So, like I said, that being said, do you agree or do you not agree? What team do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Comment down below. There's a lot of, or not even win. I won't even predict the Super Bowl because who knows? Both of those teams could be eliminated next week. I don't know. If it was a New Orleans, Kansas City, I'd go New Orleans just because experience. And Kansas City losing Hunt. They might not even make it there, man. I think Baltimore could go up and whap them. But now, see, we're just going crazy and stuff. So, I will be back next week. It will not be a sports podcast. I will probably not bring up sports and stuff again until the Super Bowl after that. Because I think I said what I needed to say. I think we spent a lot of time on there. If you guys are listening from YouTube or Facebook or CastBox, thank you for tuning in. If you want to give me a like and subscribe to whatever, go to the YouTube and subscribe there. I've been gaining some subscribers there, making some noise on YouTube. If you haven't liked the page, the Mike Deggs Reviews page, like that. Follow me on Instagram. Watch my Snapchats because they're always funny and they're always of my dog. And follow Twitter. If you have a Twitter, follow Twitter. I don't know who even uses Twitter anymore. But either way, I appreciate you guys for coming and stopping by, hanging out with me for half an hour. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.